This is PyData. This is PyData Glasgow, and welcome to our September meetup. This has been a long anticipated meetup where we are about to talk about the power of documentation, and we have Temi Dayo. But before that, we want to welcome everyone to PyData Glasgow and quickly go over certain housekeeping before we start. I'll briefly share my screen and just let me know when you can't see my screen. Share. All right. So this is where I ask the famous question. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
All right. Thank you very much. So welcome to PyData Glasgow. This is the best meetup in Glasgow. Um, you can't doubt that. But that's up for debate, though. But so PyData Glasgow is a branch of PyData, and PyData is the parent company which supports, which is PyData is basically an education arm of the parent company, non-focus, which is a non-profit charity that promotes data practices. And some of the projects that they support currently are Matplotlib, NumPy, Pandas, PyMC, Dask, and PyTables. So if you are a data scientist, data analyst, or work with data, you would have at one point used some of these packages. Matplotlib for visualizations, NumPy for doing your computations in array, Pandas definitely for handling large data sets. So Dom Focus, which is the parent company that supports this project, has PyData, which is an educational arm. And the purpose of PyData is to enable data professionals and researchers connect, also students to feel as part of the community as well. This is to promote learning, networking, and industry academia collaboration, and that is what we are trying to do with PyData Glasgow. Now, this meetup, it's a combination of different people from different places, so we want to be aware of our conduct to make sure that it is a respectable and safe space for everyone. So we will want to be kind to others. So do not insult or put down others. Please behave professionally. Remember that harassment, sexist, racist, or exclusionary jokes and languages are not appropriate for Pi data. All communication should be for professional audience, and PyData is dedicated to providing a harassment-free event experience for everyone, regardless of your gender, your sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So we do not tolerate harassment of participants in any form. So this is just a brief overview of the housekeeping rules, and just to present what PyData is all about and to make you know that you are welcome to be part of this community. We will just play a short video to let you know what PyData is. And
I am having a
can you hear my audio? That will be the next question I'll ask.
Yeah, it's fine.
The video.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's been excellent. Folks have been a mixture about academic applications and business applications. I really love the PyData community. And it's like one of my favorite conferences.
PyData is an educational program of NumFocus. We are delighted to work with local communities all around the world to put on events that bring together people who are developing these tools as well as the users of the tools.
I think it's pretty amazing that PyData is not only about the talks, it's a lot about the people and the software. We are meeting here, just networking, sharing knowledge, and also contributing to open source projects.
I think what makes PyData special, or PyData London in particular, is that it's a conference and a meetup that is from the community, by the community, for the community.
I'm really excited, and I'm also really excited to see how the community can really further my work in the future by giving me some ideas. So the questions I've had have been really thoughtful.
Nobody can innovate in isolation. You have to be plugged into the community. And that's why things like the PyData conference, where you can meet hundreds of exceptionally bright people who are really keen on what they do, is something we support.
By sponsoring an event like PyData Amsterdam, we're able to give back to the community and help to drive the innovation of open source technologies like Python forward.
We love sponsors. We love them so much. There's definitely something here for everyone. I personally have made some new friends, talked to some really cool professionals, and it's been a fantastic experience. I highly recommend you come.
I went to bed last night with a grin on my face simply because I got home and just felt happy at the quality of conversation and the quality of the people that I met yesterday here at the conference. It makes me, yeah, it's fun. You should come along.
So, PyData, it's the place to be. You would network a lot, and we are happy to have you here because you are in the right place. All right, now we have our speaker, and he is Temidayo Omoniyi, a senior data engineer and solutions architect, specializing in designing and implementing robust, scalable solutions. He's an author and a technical writer, and he will be taking us through the topic power of documentation as a developer. Temidayo, please teach us.
I'll be laughing the whole trip. Okay, yeah. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Can I say good morning? Yeah, mostly good afternoon. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Tim Diamond Andrew, and I think Precious has done justice in the introduction and everything. So I'll just share my screen and we'll go from there, right? Okay. Okay, let me use my screen. So so I'm sharing now. Let me just know if it is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Thank you very much. So this is not like my normal kind of speaking. I'm always used to doing a lot of technical presentation, like code base, building pipelines, YAMLs, and stuff like that. But I was like, okay, let's just do something different today, right? So one thing I've noticed in the industry is the higher you go, the lesser code you begin to write, and you begin to tend to understand more business process and study more documentation, right? And one of the things, one of the biggest selling point for me in every organization I've joined is, apart from being a technical person, like a solution architect and engineer, I'm also a writer and an author. So people tend to like think, oh, they get like double package. Apart from we're looking for a solution architect, we also have a writer that knows how to write very well and document processes. So today's presentation will be more about talking, discussion, and trying to know ourselves better and also asking questions. So but I don't know how it is being done. Maybe the question should be asked at the end of the section, or you can interrupt me during the section and stuff like that. So I'll be looking here because my other screen is actually here. So I know my laptop is facing me, but I might be looking here. So apologies about that in advance. So it's not that I'm looking away, but my screen is here, my presenting screen is here, but my webcam is showing me here. So just more like the title of the presentation, right? The importance of documentation as a developer. So I tend to say code tells you how code tells you how. So there's something about code. Code tells you how. Why documentation tells you why, right? So you write a code, it tells you, okay, this is how it's meant to work. But there's always going to be a why in everything you're doing, right? So for most business processes, they say build a pipeline. The question now comes that, okay, yeah, I can build pipeline, but why do I need to build a pipeline? What are the business user that needs that pipeline? Who needs to use those pipelines? So the why question is very, very important, right? So code tells you how, why documentation tells you why. So the developer guide to building knowledge that lasts is actually has to do with code itself and documentation itself. So let me just go to the next slide and let's make it a bit more interesting, right? So for most developers, we tend to look at ourselves as archaeologists, right? Where we tend to like dig deep into things. So everyone tends to dig deep into like code base. I remember when I was doing a project a long time ago, and they just threw a Java code base to me. I was like, I started digging just to understand, okay, what does this class, what does it do? What does this function, what does it do? What does this function, why is it picking from? Are they building modules or are they doing some other things? So most times we developers, we tend to class ourselves as archaeologists, right? But we tend to ask ourselves one question, and the question every developer asks themselves all the time is, have you ever spent a full day just trying to run a project locally? I know everybody has done that, right? Sometimes I run a project on my system and it works perfectly well, and I give it that same code, and they say, it's not working. And there's this term we use a lot in developers, which is called, it worked on my system, it's not your system. That's where things like containerization comes to play by using Docker and everything. We'll containerize our application and stuff like that, right? So we tend to ask ourselves this question that, have you ever run a project, right? And I try to like run it locally all day. I spend the whole day. I see that it's not still working. Another question we tend to ask ourselves is, have you ever been blocked while waiting for one person that knows how the thing works, right? So this is actually something that happens in most organizations, right? A key member of the team leaves and you bring in someone new to take over the job, and the person's like, the only thing he has to see is just code. There's no documentation, there's no dictionary, there's no diagram, there's no flow process, there's no ER diagram, like entity relationship and stuff like that. So for he or she to know, okay, what is the next line to do? How is this code based? How is it built, right? So most times, I'm in an organization and we have a key member in the team, and the person is just going on leave for like a person going on leave for like a sabbatical leave for like a whole month. And that project is going to be on store because, right, the main person that knows how to do that project is on leave. And why is that thing happening? We all know why it's happening, because a proper document. Something we tend to debate a lot is, okay. So there's something we tend to debate a lot where we say, I join a new team in an organization and I see that we're doing a particular solution for the past 6 months, they've been using a particular solution, and you're a new person in that team and you're trying to like, they've been using it for like 6 months, a year, but now you have a burning desire to tell them that, oh, this approach doesn't make sense. Like, okay, if you're doing this approach, why are you doing this approach? Because the coding tells you how, why documentation tells you why, right? So why is this thing happening this way, right? You don't tend to get this information because why the solution was not properly documented and everything like that, right? So the main point I'm just trying to drive out with all these questions we tend to ask ourselves as developers is, it has to do basically with knowledge depth, right? Because I'm building a solution as an engineer. I can write code very well. I can write SQL very well, right? I can write batch files. I can write PowerShell very well, or Java or .NET framework, right? We can write all of that very well. And now with the introduction of large language models, you don't really even need to like really be that deep in writing code. You can always prompt your AI to help you do that, right? But the major question has to be with the why itself, right? The technical depth matters, right? Yes, there's the code itself, right? But why does the business user, why do they need this, or some other things that comes into play? So that's where the questions that we developers tend to ask ourselves a lot, the why question itself, right? So there's this question every manager can tend to tell themselves that my code is self-explanatory. It's a very, very big the issues, right, for most developers and most engineers and most solution architects, right? So there's a word we can tend to say that, okay, good code is self-documenting, which is true to an extent, right? Why I would say it is true to an extent is nowadays people tend to comment the code, right? If I'm writing the code, I will put some comment that, okay, this particular function does this, that particular function does that, right? It's actually good because actually a very good practice. But I've seen that most senior developers they don't tend to do that, right? Every senior developers are like, oh, I'll just write the code because I'm when I write the code, I'm still going to be in the organization for a particular period of time. I will later find out that in 2, 3, 5 years time, he or she leaves, and the code now is not even documented, nothing is there. But some people they tend to have this conviction that, okay, I'll add some comments to my code. With that alone, I feel like my code is self-explanatory itself, right? And that's the lie we tend to tell ourselves, right? We tend to tell ourselves that lie a lot that, oh, my code is self-explanatory. I'll give a scenario for this, right? So there was a time I was building like this pipeline on on GitHub, right? On GitHub, sorry, GitLab runner. I was building a pipeline on GitLab runner, and so I was building it for some reason. It kept failing, right? It kept failing, and when I was doing further investigation, I found out why it was failing. That's to do with an IP issue, right? And so it was failing. It has to do with an IP issue. I was, okay, that's fine. And I reached out to a senior developer. It was actually like a client project back then. I reached out to a senior developer, and yeah, she just told me that, oh, add a tag to the YAML file and put CI/CD or put DevOps. And I added the tag to the YAML file. Like I've been in my YAML file, I just added the tag, like another tag. Like YAML, you have like you have the job, you have the tool and all those other things. If you're using Azure DevOps or if you're using GitHub or GitLab action and stuff like that. So you have the different steps and everything. So there's a part I just kept like a new function. I just kept tag and I put the DevOps as a tag. And it started working. And there was no reason, like it's just working. And I'm like, okay, why was it working? Because just added the YAML file was actually correct, but it wasn't working, right? But now you putting just a tag, it started working. And the senior developer say, oh, just put a tag, it will work. And I know that it is working, right? Now it is working. I know that adding that tag made it work. But for most senior developers, they're like, oh, you should figure it out yourself, right? Just add that tag, it's going to work. But for me now, I know, okay, if I add the tag, it will work. But what about the next person that comes in a year time, or in 2 years time, and they're now facing that same issue? Now, I know that if I add the tag, it will work. The senior dev engineer knows if you add the tag, it will work, right? But if both of us leave in a year time and a new person comes and he writes a proper YAML file and it fails, it's going to be stuck, right? So those are the things we tend to overlook, right? Because a senior developer will just add a YAML file, it will just add a tag, it will work. Me I'm actually Azure DevOps. I'm actually an Azure DevOps person and also an Azure administrator. So I tend to understand, okay, when I add tag, mean I'm grouping it to some certain group in the Entra ID and everything, right? That's scenario one as an Azure administrator. Scenario two for as an Azure DevOps person. If I add a tag, am I trying to use a self-hosted container or am I using a default container? So there's something called managed service, right? A managed service in GitLab or GitHub is, oh, the container I'm spinning for my YAML file are actually being managed by GitHub or GitLab. But the advantage of that is I don't need to start provisioning, start setting up a container service to run my YAML file. It's actually being managed by GitHub, GitLab, right? Cool, awesome. It makes it work faster. But the disadvantage with that is that at every run, it spins up a container, and at the end of the run, it destroys the container, right? So now look at my issue now with that problem, right? I've written a YAML file that connects to some certain IPs. It wasn't working. And I was like, okay, it's not working, but the YAML file is correct. And I was told, okay, use a tag, and the tag started working. But me, because I actually had experience of DevOps, Azure DevOps, and also Azure Administrator, so I understand what it was, right? So using that tag, it basically just means I'm trying to use a self-hosted. So rather than me using the default managed container service from either GitLab or GitHub, right? I'm using a self-hosted that's actually being stored in an EC2 instance or in a virtual environment. So now, because of I'm a technical person, I actually understand what that actually means, right? But if a junior now meets the manager, okay, yeah, you said this tag works, right? It's working well, but why is it working? That's the question, right? Because a manager already knows that if you add a tag, he's going to use the self, he's going to use the self-hosted, right? He's going to use the self-hosted, which is being hosted in the dedicated container in the organization. But a junior developer might not know that. Why he doesn't know that? Because why these processes are not well documented, right? But me just telling someone that, oh, just use a tag to work. Scenarios like that, and you're like, oh, why? So that question of why is actually very important. That's where documentation comes to play now. If there was a proper documentation of scenarios like that, okay, if you are building a YAML file, always tie it to the organizational infrastructure, not the managed service being hosted by GitLab, DevOps, EC2 instance, or stuff like that, right? Always tie it to the organizational infrastructure. So things like that, I don't need to like, oh, start overthinking things. I know that, okay, when I'm building my YAML file, I'll put it as the universal variable. Okay, the tag tie it to the DevOps container. Simple. And I build my stuff, it works, right? So things like that, right? And also scenarios like, oh, I'm setting up an Airflow, right? How to provision Airflow. The question now comes, okay, should I provision Airflow in uh, EKS, in Kubernetes, Elastic Kubernetes Service, or should I use Airflow as a managed, that's MWAA, that's AWS Airflow managed service, or should I use the GCP managed service, or should I use Airflow on an EC2 instance that is being self-hosted? So different scenarios come to play, and you ask yourself, okay, why am I using Airflow in a self-hosted service? I've seen some organizations that prefer using Airflow on EKS, that Elastic Kubernetes Service. They hosted on AKS. I've seen organizations that they prefer hosting the Apache Airflow self-service, that's in their own environment, in Docker, it's in a virtual environment, like a virtual environment, that's Azure VM or EC2 instance. I've seen organizations that they prefer using a managed service, right? Different scenarios come to play, right? Okay, the question is why. That why question is really very important. And for you to be able to get that why, a proper documentation has to be in place, right? But most senior executive, most management, they're just after the solution working, right? So those are the things as you tend to grow in your career and everything. It's not just all about the code itself. It's all about explaining processes, explaining why is this working this way, why is this way itself, right? So for code alone, right, it's only half the story. Code alone, what I mean is half the story. It's the code just tells you it works, right? But why does it work? The code tells you how it works, but the documentation tells you why it works the way it's meant to work, right? So some explanation around this is good code tells you what it is doing, right? But it will never tell you some certain things like why a specific technical decision was made over another. That's what I was trying to say, right? Why am I using Airflow on a self-hosted service rather than using it on EKS? I know that if I'm using it on EKS, like Elastic Kubernetes Service, it's going to be faster because I'm using Elastic Engine, right? Or if I'm using it on MW, it's actually a mouthful kind of MWAA, that's for AWS, right? It's actually even faster MWAA, right? But the difference is that it's actually way expensive over there, right? Or if I'm using it on GCP CloudWatch, I don't just bother myself about managing this service. Oh, they're going to be time and downtime, stuff like that. Everything is being managed by GCP, is being managed by AWS, right? I don't think Azure as is equivalent for Airflow. So I think for Azure we use ADF most type of orchestration and stuff like that. We use ADF and you orchestrate data bricks from there, but stuff like that. Sure. So those are the scenarios we tend to like that code will not tell you. Code will just tell you that, oh, it's working and this is how it works, right? But documentation will always, it won't tell you why a specific technical decision was made over another, right? How it fits into the larger system architecture. It won't tell you that. The code will just work, but it won't give you like a bigger picture, like a bigger view of the entire architecture itself, right? And another thing, it won't tell you what business goal this feature is trying to achieve, right? It won't tell you that, right? So now as I kept the image for most manager, like, oh, and this thing actually saves managers a lot of stress because the idea is if I have everything well documented, you don't need to meet me and start asking me silly question. Oh, go and check the documentation, or go everything has been well documented, right? So we don't. And most developers we tend to look at we prefer most developers prefer writing the code part, the documentation part. They hate it like I don't like the documentation, but when it comes to the coding part, I don't care. I can spend my whole day. I would not even eat, just be writing the code. Let my the code keep fighting. Let me be having errors. I'll check Stack Overflow. I'll check ChatGPT. I'll try and make sure I solve this problem by fire by force. But I can spend like 1 month trying to build a whole code. I build a full infrastructure. But documentation will just take me like just 2 days. We can always prolong like, no, I don't want to do this stuff. Right. So similar situation like that happens a lot, right? So those are the things code will never tell you that documentation will always do for you, right? So I tend to look at code as for the future itself, right? So documentation itself is more like for the future. I said code, right? So I tend to look at documentation as for future itself, not for now, right? So what I mean is for future, it's actually so look at your documentation as like something like you're investing for the future, right? So documentation for future self, right? So the big idea is your most important collaborator in the next 6 months actually your documentation. I'll give a scenario for that, right? So there's a time I was doing a project for one of these commercial banks, one of these big commercial banks in West Africa, right? West Africa. I was doing a project for them, and there was a part of that project that I needed to um I don't know if any of you have tried mounting Databricks in ADLS, that's data legend, so right? For some people that have tried mounting Databricks in ADLS, you know that it's actually a long process because you have to first create something like a service principal. For that service principal, you have to give it like a contributor access to data lake Gen 2. For data lake Gen 2, you have to have tied to Databricks using key vaults. The process is just very, very long. What I'm trying to say, it's a very long process, right? And most times people tend to like miss it. So when they're trying to like set up Databricks to mount with data legend too, when they're seeing the process is long, what they just set up for, they set up for using shared access token, right? And most times shared access token is usually limited, right? It lasts for a particular period of time. So for them, they're like, oh, since using a service principal, that you're building an app that makes it as a service principal, and now connect that app to data lake Gen 2 and now mount it into the bricks, right? They look at it as a very long process. So they tend to run away from it, right? So I was doing this project for like a commercial, I'm giving like a real world scenario, right? So I was doing this project for a commercial bank in Nigeria, right? Like they're trying to be like a whole solution and stuff like that. So I was able to build the whole mounting process, like setting up all the mountain, doing so many things, right? And luckily for me, I actually had it documented in a PowerPoint. I did like as a PowerPoint documentation, right? I didn't do it as a Google Doc. I was supposed to as a PowerPoint documentation, and I forgot about it. Like I literally forgot about the whole solution. And 3 months after we deployed, we built the solution, we already released it, they're not using it live and everything. So they're not trying to, so I think something happened. I don't know, I can't really recall what happened, but they're trying to make some changes and they're not trying to now mount the Databricks into data lake Gen 2. And this was like a crazy problem for them. For like, they called in that data guys. They're actually not called data engineers. They're actually data engineers, but they're more on premise. So they're using like MSBI tools. When I mean MSBI, I mean it's like SSIS, SSRS, and SSAS, right? So that's the tools they're using. So they're trying to like venture into the cloud and everything. So it was kind of, so they were like talking about this thing like something like impossible to do. They checked some videos on YouTube, right? And some YouTube videos are actually outdated, right? So many things change all the time. So they're usually kind of outdated to an extent, right? So they kept having issues. And for me, I've not forgotten that I did a documentation on it on PowerPoint. And they have to now reach out to me. And they don't know if they reach out to me, there's a clause because if you reach out to me after a particular period of time, you have to pay for my services and everything. So they reached out to me after like, I think 6 months, I can't remember, right? They said, oh, they will pay, blah, 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 blah. They just wanted to come them to remount it, do the entire infra, set up Terraform to like provision the resource and everything. And I was like, all these things are actually documented. And they're like, wait, I was like, I sent a Google Drive with all the documentation about all the processes. And they went there, they look at documentation, and the next day they went to set, like they look at documentation. That night, those guys did it all through the night. And the next day they went to um set up everything. And they're like, the manager was like, that's how would have paid extra money. But the thing was like, because you guys have a program that only one person can actually solve it, the other person cannot solve it, then why to start reaching out to consultant? But that is where documentation comes in, right? Because if something is well documented, even if someone leaves the organization, you know that okay, this person has left, all the things, all the solutions this person has built internally in the organization, you can actually go back to the documentation and actually go through it, understand the concept, apart from just the code itself, understand the concept, understand how everything works step by step, right? So I just read through the this slide and said, okay, so look at documentation as something you collaborate with in the next 6 months, right? So future you are forgotten the context, right? So it happens to me a lot, right? That's why you notice I'm actually an author. I write a lot, right? Sometimes I'm trying to do something. I'm like, oh, I can't remember this thing. I also say, oh, I've actually written about this thing in the past. I'll just go to one of my articles, one of my blog posts, one of my documentation on because I write a lot on GitHub, on Medium and stuff like that, right? Another platform. I go to some of my articles. I say, okay, I might not have done something around this. I'll just check one of the steps. Oh, this is how you do it. And I just go and do it, right? So most times, apart from me writing blogs, authoring different articles online for people to read, actually, it's not just only people that read it. I also read my articles myself. That's to tell you that. Okay, for me, I still go back to those articles that I've written 2 years ago, 3 years ago, just to understand the step because sometimes when I'm writing an article, I use multiple resources, right? I cannot start, okay, let me start looking for all those resources I use to just solve a problem. I know that, okay, my own article has been streamlined to just solve that problem, right? So scenarios like that. So most times, if you see that I write articles, I'm not writing for you guys alone. I'm actually writing for myself also because I use my articles a lot to solve my own problem at client base and work base level. So one of the reasons I said that documentation is for your future you is future you might have forgotten some particular context, right? You forget concepts a lot, forget context, forget why we did this over this. Future you don't remember the clever or trade-off you made. Okay, now I did a solution. What was the trade-off? Why did I do it this way over this way? I'll give a scenario, right? Imagine I'm trying to push data to a data warehouse. So I'm moving data from one environment, so I'm moving to an OLTP data warehouse like Synapse dedicated SQL pool or Fabric dedicated SQL pool or BigQuery. And I'm noticing that, oh, this thing is actually slow. I know that, yeah, Python can actually do a full ETL for me end to end, but I'm not using an engine. I'm not using like a Spark compute engine. I'm not using like Cluster. I'm not using DBT threads. I'm not using Spark compute. I'm just using pure Python code on my laptop to move millions of records of data. I know that that doesn't make sense. I'm not using things like Adobe. I'm not using things like Spark. It doesn't make sense, right? But I know Python can actually do it. And you're like, okay, I know Python can do it, but why am I going through why am I not provisioning Spark as a self-hosted? Why am I going through all those long process? Because why? It's actually a trade-off. The trade-off is speed and accuracy. Yes, even though my normal Python or my VS Code, I write it on my VS Code will do it for me. I know that it won't give me that level of accuracy because I'm not working with a transactional table. I'm not working with like MySQL or SQL Server. I'm working with an OLAP, not an OLTP this time around. Because an OLAP, like analytical database itself, right? So things like that to take time, right? So I have to have like a massive parallel processing, right? That have multiple nodes and stuff like that, like Spark, Hadoop, and the rest, right? So that's at some trade-off we tend to leave. Future me will thank past me for leaving maps. It happens a lot, right? So the future me is going to always thank me past me that, oh, I documented everything, which is like a flow process of how I achieved this. So past me is going to like go through the flow process. Okay, this is how I achieved this, right? So past me is a future is going to thank past me that, oh, you did a flow on end-to-end process of achieving this. So those are like some of the advantages we tend to get by documenting processes and steps, right? So some of the main points I'm just trying to drive out is that documentation isn't just a chore for others, it's an investment in your own future productivity, right? So for your own future productivity, don't look at documentation as just, oh, it's just a chore, or it's just like a to-do list. No, look at it as an investment for your future productivity. It makes so why are you asking 10 people in your organization, okay, how is this working? How is that working? I just need to go through the documentation and understand the entire process end to end. And that's all itself, right? So now let's now talk about the framework for clarity, right? So this is actually broken down into two different major processes, right, for documentation. So we have two major processes for documentation, right? We have the why. So I look at the why as more like an high level step, right? So the why is always very important, right? I can't just start as I'm working as a data engineer today, right? I can't just start building pipeline, moving data from point A to point B. There has to be a why. Why do you want to move that data, right? So that's like the highest level, right? That's an high level. For me to have that why, it means the business users has to be involved in this whole scenario itself, right? So that why has to do with the business users themselves, right? So look at that why as an high level. So that has to do more with strategic meetings, team alignments. This is more like the bigger picture, right? We also have the how. So the how is usually the mid-level. That how is now where you now start writing codes, you now start onboarding and contributing. So this one are more like the manual process of the entire thing itself, right? So I'll start by explaining the why itself, right? So the why has to do with more like the documentation, like the decision making itself, right? So it usually focus more on team alignment and knowledge sharing. So before I start moving a pipeline, every stakeholders have to come together, right? The why. What can I document? Okay. Now that's why things like, oh, create a BRD document, create things like SOW, create things like POC, right? So we have to like ERD document, right? What is like ERD? What like POC, SOW, right? So SOW is like scope of work, right? What like a scope of, okay, this is all you have to do for this project, right? So there's a scope of work, right? SOW. What the ERD document, right? So that's an inquiry documents. I also have POC, which is like a proof of concept, right? So after I've done it, after like a proof of concept, a POC documents and everything, right? So all those documents, all those ERD documents, all those SOP, all those POCs, all this is actually very, very important, right? To like um why I actually know this because I do a lot of consultants, I do a lot of POC, SOWs, ERD documents and everything, right? So those things are actually very, very important in your why, right? So your team alignment and knowledge sharing. So the question is, okay, what is the answer? Why did we build this? Why this way, right? So the question is, why did we build this and why this way? So those are the things we need to try to like answer, right? And some essential document for your why is your architectural diagram, right? So your why is, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve, right? So these are the diagram that comes with it, right? It's more like a receipt and like your technical choice. Okay, I'm going through this route. Why am I going through this route? I'm using this tool. Why am I using this tool, right? Those have to be documented, right? So your system design doc, right? So it's more like your blueprint of everything itself. Your project, and your product and project brief, right? So linking everything. So from code to design, link everything together, give like the business value proposition. Try to look at time. Let me don't take so much time. So your how, remember your how has to do more with the documentation itself, right? Your how is so your how has to do more with the documentation itself, right? Okay. So your how rather has to do with the code itself. Apologies about that. So your how has to do more with the code itself, right? Okay. Simplifying the code, how it works and everything. I might not really touch more in this, but let me just say onboarding and simplifying contribution, right? What it answers is how it runs, right? How it runs, how do I contribute, right? And most times for contribution for your how, it's usually done in readme files. So for some of us that do documentation on GitHub or GitLab, right? You see where I'm hosting on GitHub, right? GitHub repo. You see they'll say you have the place that say check your readme. So you start writing your documentation in Markdown. So for some of you are very, very conversant with writing Markdowns in Ashnode or Dev2 and some other blogging sites like that, right? We write it. For APIs, I just added APIs to just like another context of kind of documentation, right? And these are one of the most, I think API documentation has to be the most advanced kind of documentation so far, right? Because it's very, very technical. So most times, I think the highest level for writing has to do with API documentation and application documentation, actually, those two, right? So if you're a Google Doc and you're API documentation, API writer, I think you're at the top of the food chain in writing. So the next one has to do with the tools for collaboration, right? So I just listed some tools that everyone uses this for collaboration, right? And I also said there are a lot, right, in the market today, but these are like the three most popular ones. I'll say three, four. So I'll classify Google Docs and Microsoft Word online together, right? But I know Microsoft Word are trying to become more collaborative, so that making it, but I still prefer Google Docs to Microsoft Word actually. But Microsoft Word on-prem is actually nice because that's some very nice features actually with some the editors and everything. So I'll start with Confluence, right? So Confluence is for me, like my organization, we use Confluence internally, right? So Confluence is more like is more enterprise focused and heavy integrated with Jira. So for some of you that use Jira, that create a lot of Jira tickets, right? I think they're under the company Astacia. I might not pronounce it very well right now, but under the company called Astacia, right? So for Confluence, right, it's enterprise heavy integrated, right? Right. So most like for some organizations they use Confluence a lot for that documentation, right? So and you see that it's heavily integrated with things like Jira, right? So you see a Jira board where you have like agile tasks, you have sprints, you have to-do lists, you have subtasks and stuff like that, right? So you have Jira, and some of the strengths for Confluence is structured powered macro tied to a social ecosystem integration, right? So it is very, it's a macro uh, solution, right? So when you say this macro, this micro, right? So micro are like microservices, so they're like broken into smaller pieces. While we have macros are like a full-blown architecture. So for some of us that are like software engineers, right, that we say, oh, we have like macro infrastructure, like I have micro infrastructures. So a macro infra, like a full-blown architecture. So it's a macro solution. For most startup, we use more of Notion. Like I have something I'm building with my friends, and everything is actually being we use Notion and Google Docs a lot, right? For everything. I don't think we're going to use Confluence or Jira for anything at all. So for Notion, right, it's more like it's startup focused, right? Because more people are like, oh, you're trying to become the next $1 million unicorn. You're trying to become the next $1 billion unicorn. You're trying to start like your own, you're trying to get into YC and stuff like that, right? You know that all those your processes, all your collaboration tools is preferable should be done on either Notion or preferable Notion, because Notion is actually well organized. That's if you are trying to go for a paid plan. And Notion, they have things like templates where you can purchase templates and customize your stuff. I remember then I was using one template for like agile where I have like to-do list, markdown and some other things. So you can actually have markdown the way you have like your Jira kind of feeling. That you can actually have those kind of feeling also to in Notion. And Notion also has its own database, which is actually very nice. So it's best for startup and wants all in one solutions, right? So for all startup that wants all in one solution, I would say go for Notion, right? And some of its strength is highly flexible. It has its own database, it has its own documentation, it has its own tasks. Yeah, remember I said it. It has like a to-do list tasks and makes everything accurate and seamless itself, right? And I think the most popular one, which everyone uses now, is Google Doc, right? So one of the things I like about Google Doc is just quick. It's quick. It's fast. It's quick. I don't overthink it, that kind of thing. And the beautiful thing is, if I want to do like a to-do list, I can just connect it to Google Sheets and do like some Google function, Google Sheet and do some like functions that have like markdown, checkbox, do some if statement and some other things. And if it's not null, blah blah blah, and it's actually very fun. So you can add do some office and some scripts to now connect everything together. So some of the advantage of using Google Docs is okay. Some of the advantage of using Google, sorry, I got some notification. I thought it's from here. So some of the advantage of using Google Doc is it's quick for collaboration and its simplicity. It's just a doc, just open it, Google Doc, and you start writing. So easy. I don't just start understanding all these headers and all those things. The headers are it just makes life so easy, right? And so for collaboration, it's quick for collaboration. It's actually the best collaboration actually for documentation. So I think so. Um, the strength is unbeatable real-time editing. Yeah, it has an amazing real-time editing and familiar to everyone. Everyone uses Google for Gmail. So but everyone has a Google Gmail. So just have your Google workspace. From workspace, you see all your different Google Office suites, you see your Google Docs, your Google Sheets, your Google Meet, Calendar, Google Drive, even Gemini is added to it. So everything is just everything is just like put together in just a single workspace, right? So it makes your entire work fast and seamless. Um, it becomes powerful with strict folder. So one of the advantages again is that you can actually organize your work with putting it in a folder, right? Because of the Google Drive, you can have everything in a folder. It makes it seamless to use. So let's talk about a little bit about agile, right? I know time is well spent, right? So um, documentation is sprint, right? Also, too, sometimes people say, oh, you can actually document in sprint, right? Well, we do a lot of sprints in coding, right? Oh, we have to code, we have to complete this project, we have a sprint to complete this project in the next 3 weeks. This has to be deployed, it has to be live in production and everything, right? So you give yourself time, you rush your test self, you give yourself, oh, that's ready in XYZ time, right? So there's a time for all of these to run, right? So those are things we tend to look at. So now, some of the focus, right, is um, documentation also has its own. Don't look at documentation as just like it's just there. I don't to like take it seriously. It's just something that I do it when I feel like doing it. No. So there's a myth that comes like, okay, agile does not mean documentation. This is false. So let me just rephrase my word, right? So agile means no documentation. This is actually false, right? If I can have a sprint that I need to build an infrastructure. That sprint, part of that build of infrastructure, documentation also has to be part of it, right? So like some cultures organizations are trying to embed now is whatever solution you build, document it, create an entity, create a data dictionary for it. So everything you build now, every organization is trying to like, because we need to be ready because there's a very high, there's high retention, there's high exit from this thing organization nowadays, right? People are switching organization rapidly. Everyone is moving, switching jobs all the time, right? And we just a situation that where one person leaves, the project just gets stalled, right? Someone has to be able to take over for me. So now what most organizations are trying to embed now is you build your infrastructure, you build your code, document it, create a data dictionary for it. It's always standard for most organizations right now. Build architecture. So agile now doesn't just mean just writing code and building infrastructure. That's writing your .NET framework and building some infrastructure as a code like Terraform or ARM or Biceps. No, everything are all together. Everything are now all together as an agile project, right? So now remove that idea from you that documentation is not part of agile. Make it be part of agile, right? So it makes your work seamless for future. It fulfills you and your team for future use cases, right? So agile does not agile means just enough documentation. Create at real time, right? So some practice is definition done.
Sorry,
Create document.
can I just say something at this point? I think a
Okay.
lot of people want to add questions, so if probably you can just round up within the next 1 or 2 minutes, that would be really, really appreciated. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So now
And yes,
agile.
a lot of this information will be shared, so please just
Yeah,
continue.
I'll, I'll
Thank you.
I'll give out the slide. Yeah. Okay, so some of the payouts, some of the advantage. This is actually the last slide, right? Faster onboarding. Yeah, it's actually faster onboarding, right? So if a new member come, you quickly understands everything because right, it makes the work faster because I don't have to start looking at piles of code, right? I understand everything, right? Because of everything is documented, so it has faster onboarding. And now people are not trying to do something called like having like a Q&A. Like I know, like there's one solution I built before that it was like an HR solution, right? So for the HR, so everything has to do with HR policy. Rather than me reading tons of documents, I can actually talk to a chatbot that gives me all this information real time, right? I was actually embedded in an enterprise solution in the organization itself, which you can call by team, right? So these are some things, right? So documentation, chatbots also is also coming in also as a documentation approach, kind of to an extent though. So faster onboarding, faster shorter sprints, right? So the sprint is always shorter because I have all the information I need in a particular location. I just go to Confluence, I go to Notion, I go to Google Docs, I get everything, I get all the data addition, I understand how the data connects to each other, and better decision, increase velocity and confidence, and the entire team moves faster and together. So the last slide is build knowledge, not just code. Thank you. Also. So thank you. And
Oh, I like this last
oh,
slide. Oh, please keep up the last slide. We need to spotlight that.
okay, okay,
Um,
okay, okay, okay. let me present again.
So let me start with thank you
Then,
very much, Temidayo. Your presentation was wonderful. Please chat, where are
okay.
you joining us from? Please, can you tell us where you are joining us from? Please, 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 please. We want the chat to be buzzing. Where are you joining us from? Please. Oh, there's a lot of gestures, reactions. They are clapping for you.
Hey, thank you.
Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos, Nigeria. Wow, nice. UK, Mariam. Thank you. Keep it coming. Glasgow, Scotland. All right. Lagos, Nigeria. Milton Keynes. Lagos, Nigeria. Okay. Wow, 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 wow. We have active participants. Thank you very much for listening and paying at Glasgow. All right. Me personally, I'm joining from Glasgow. Yes. Um, yes, I'm joining from Glasgow, the best city in the whole of UK. You can't argue that. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much for joining. And wow, we have a lot of participation. Thank you very much. Okay, all right. David, thank you very much. And I like how you
Okay.
ended. Build knowledge, not just code. And if you have questions, I already two people had questions already that they've asked. Um, I think during your presentation, someone asked if the session was recorded. Popola, yes, the session has been recorded and you can have access to it. Just send a mail to um just send a mail or we'll create a link and upload it to the YouTube channel of PyData Glasgow. And once it's up there, you can view the session. Also, a question from Destiny. How do you leverage? All right, I'll just paste this question. I don't know. I might just present. Okay. So Destiny asks, how do you leverage on AI for both personal and organization work projects? Do you have like a particular tool that you often use all the time?
Mm. So it depends, right? So I would say two things, right? So don't so okay, I'll say it in two different ways, right? So the time it takes to do like research has been shortened down, right? So for me, I prefer using Perplexity to an extent, right? Because it's not just like it's throwing out LLMs to you. It's actually scraping the web, right? And it's more detailed, right? So one of the when I'm doing research, right? One of the things I prefer using is actually Perplexity because it's a chatbot, an AI chatbot, but not just like a LLM. It scrapes the internet, like it's just like a web scraper that scrapes the internet and gives you precise information that so what I would have done using Google to search. Perplexity will do that for me. I give you multiple links. I actually use almost using Google to also search the internet. So in terms of research, right, I use a lot of Perplexity, right? In terms of code base, right? I was everyone is trying to be shy away from because it's two ways, right? Code is coding using AI is meant to make your work faster, right? But you don't need to 100% depend on it, right? Let me give you this scenario, right? Someone that writes all his code by himself is doing very well, perfectly well, right? Someone that uses AI but already knows how to code very well is going to be more faster and more productive, right? I'm not saying that don't learn how to code. Please, very, very important. Because if AI gives you Jack Robinson, you're your own, and you will get fined for it. Even when Amazon came to our place, they also pushed for using AI to code, right? But please always understand how to code, right? Because even if I'm trying to do something and AI gives me, I'll first read through it. Okay, this function does this function does that. Okay, why does this class? What does it move? I'll see something, I'm like, oh no, this is wrong, this is wrong. I'll fix it myself, right? So for research, because I do a lot of research, right? I use a lot of Perplexity and yeah, Gemini also too. Gemini is actually very good because also Google own AI. I tend to shy away from ChatGPT nowadays, right? I tend to shy away from ChatGPT nowadays. So Perplexity, then Gemini second. So I'll stop there.
All right. I think what about Etable? I don't know what that means, but is it Etable for documentation, I guess? So I think you shared three tools that are your preferred: Confluence, Notion, and Google Docs. I don't know why you didn't put a logo of Microsoft Word, but let's leave that aside.
I'm a Microsoft guy, don't worry. I'm a Microsoft ambassador, don't worry.
What about Etable? Um,
Ah, I've heard about, I'm not used it before. I'll have to check it. That's the first time I'm hearing about
does
it. Maybe the
anyone
person.
has anyone used Etable on the call? If you have, probably you might just give us an idea. Has anyone used Etable? If you can just gesture and I mean the PyData is community engagement, so Etable, has anyone used it? But yeah, I think Etable is also used for documentation. I know about Etable, but I've not used it. So yes, you can use Etable for documentation. I know about it, but I've not used it. But the question was just for in case anyone on the call wanted to maybe dig further and provide an answer to that. All right. The next question from Mariam: are we getting templates for those of us new to documentation? Yes. Are we getting templates?
Yeah, there's some very, yeah, I'll say that. I'll send the PowerPoint. I'll also send the template actually. Some Google Drive, some GitHubs and everything. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So how you will get access to these resources on the LinkedIn page for PyData Glasgow, we would attach the resources for this meetup. So we'll give a review of what was discussed and attach the resources so that you can use it. Okay, I think we have a comment from Gift. Over dependency on AI can be disastrous. I don't know. You
Yeah.
added oh, okay, can be disastrous. Hyphen oh, use it to debug a little, but must have the basic knowledge. Yes, I totally believe what you said, and I support that. Um, yes. Anyone who wants to comment on that can, please. Oh, Rosin left already. Rosin, thank you very much for joining. When you see the video, you'll see that we gave you a shout out. All right. Um, could you please share a resource for anyone learning to document their code and steps for personal work related projects? Um,
I'll do it.
all right, so Temidayo has promised to do that in the GitHub repo. Please, when
Yeah.
you are using the GitHub repo, just kindly leave it a star if you find it really, really helpful, because that is more
Yeah.
like saying a form of thank you to him that you value the
Mm.
resources that he has put together for you in the GitHub repo. So yes, he says he would do that. So please, when you're using it, just kindly leave a star, probably a follow as well for him. That would be really, really helpful. And just show that, oh, he's creating something that you find useful and will give him motivation to do more for you. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for being part of this amazing meetup. Any, I would say it's the best meetup in Glasgow. I just have to tell you that because yes, you are going to learn things while you are here. You are going to network, you are going to connect. So please connect with every one of us on LinkedIn. We accept LinkedIn requests, we chat and respond to great. What advice for newbies in the tech space? Do you want to take that or Tolu, do you want to take this question?
What's the question again?
What's your advice for newbies in the tech space?
Okay, I think my advice for anybody in the tech space is to pick a niche, right? It's very easy to move all around. Personally, myself, when I wanted to get into the tech space, I did a master's in data science, right? Prior to that time, I'd been a data analyst for about 5 years with Huawei. But coming into a new market in UK, after doing my master's, I knew I had to get my foot into the industry one way or the other. So the strategy I employed was to pick a niche. And that was how I ventured into data engineering. So pick a niche and just dive deep into it. And that is the advice I would give. And another advice I would give is we've talked about the abuse of AI and the use of AI. And to be honest, it's very easy to abuse AI, right? And over depend on it. But one thing I would say is make sure your fundamentals are very solid. But even I still find myself trying to go back to my fundamentals, right? Still trying to, get myself, you know, uh, kind of get myself to the next level when it comes to data modeling, my SQL. Sometimes, you just forget some of those fundamentals because you depend so much on AI. And it's very important you solidify your fundamentals before you go to using AI, and it will even help you understand whatever output AI is giving to you. It will make it easy for you to debug issues whenever it arises. And I think those are the two major advice I would give to newbies in the industry.
Temidayo, do you have any advice for what's your advice for newbies in the tech space?
I I think Tola said everything actually. Don't be the industry is just oversaturated right now, so don't be carried away. Don't be carried away by me because for me, don't use me as an example because I work in consultants, right? So we do a lot, so don't be carried away by me. So I think Tola has said everything right. Just pick a niche, right? And just having a niche is actually what really matters. Pick a niche and um improve on it. But at the same time, so I think for me, I would say perfect your fundamentals, first of all, perfect your fundamentals. And irrespective about anything, also be AI literate. Don't run away from AI. Like I don't mean use AI to solve your problem, but be AI literate in the sense that every industry now, irrespective about anything, right? You have to understand how AI is being used. Even I can't start mentioning names of industry, but everyone are looking for ways to embed AI into the already infrastructures and everything. And for them to be able to do it, for them to value you, you have to be AI literate. You have to understand the lingo. You have to understand when I talk about RAG models, when I talk about vector data and vectoring and all those other things. So understand your fundamentals, be AI literate, and pick a niche, and from there you go. The sky is the starting point actually.
So you've heard it. Pick a niche and focus on your niche. Don't be distracted. Today you start software engineering, tomorrow you enter data science. Next week you started data engineering. Next 2 weeks you've entered full
Cyber
stack.
security.
Next 4 days you are in cyber security because you heard that they earn a
DevOps.
lot of money. Next 5 days you are in
DevOps.
UI UX because it's not hard. It's just to do Figma. Hmm. Pick a niche and run with it. But yeah, sometimes you might be confused and you might just want to try out to have a feel. Just have a feel to know, oh, what would I like or what would I not like. That would be okay. It's just having a feel. But it's not that you are focusing on one and you've gone like 10 meters deep and you're like, oh no, this is not for me. Let me combine this with this. So pick a niche and just go with it. If you want to know if you are going to change, just have a feel. Have a feel is not you are going in with everything at once. No, just maybe overview of what it does and maybe you think okay you may want to switch, but have a niche and run with it. Number two, don't be AI illiterate, meaning don't be AI averse. And also on the other end, don't be very dependent on AI, because if you're over dependent on AI, when it will hallucinate, that's the English term for AI giving you wrong response. When it hallucinates, you will not know. So use AI, be AI literate to help you improve your productivity. At the same time, be strong with your fundamentals. So that's three free advice from Tolu and uh, Temidayo. If you need another advice from me, I'll just say lock in. That would just be the other one. When I mean locking, I mean don't be distracted by whatever
Yeah.
noise you see on social media about. I think this is the aspect I like to talk about
Mhm.
because sometimes when people start their tech journey, they start seeing people on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or saying, oh, they earn this amount, they've done this, they've done this, and you start comparing yourself with that, with them. I don't want you to do that. That would just be the only free advice I would do. Just start the fundamentals, pick a niche, do the fundamentals, use AI to improve your productivity. Don't be overly dependent on AI. Just use it to improve your productivity, and don't allow the noise to distract you. And basically just enjoy the process and grow. You can do a lot in 3 years. That's what I would say. And maybe an extra one, pick a mentor. But yeah, beyond that, I think that's the you asked for free advice and we gave you five. So yes, that is it. Thank you very much to everyone that joined this call. If you have maybe one more question, just this is 7:37. We should be done in the next 7 minutes. All right. So yeah, thank you everyone that joined, and we really appreciate your time and the engagement and the enthusiasm, and we hope that you have learned a lot. You have learned a lot, and we've taken advice from all of you that joined. Gift gave the advice, don't use AI too much, and she added, oh, don't use AI too much, oh. So yes. Yeah. Also, we've also had questions, great ones from Destiny. Thank you very much for being engaging and asking questions. We thank you everyone that joined from Lagos, Nigeria, from the UK, in Scotland, Milton Keynes, Lagos mainland. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we really appreciate. We will see you on the next meet. Okay, Temidayo, you raised your hand.
Yeah, Precious. So before you can we get the YouTube channel link so we know
Okay, yeah.
It,
So you will get a link from Tolu would post that in the chat for us.
it's been posted before. I will try and post
Post
again.
again. So that will be the
Yeah.
link for PyData Glasgow, and also the link to PyData Glasgow's LinkedIn page, where you can follow us and keep up to date with our events. Because LinkedIn page is our primary form of communication of our events, and Meetup is where we post our events and manage the links to the meetings itself. But LinkedIn is our primary form of communication. So please do well to follow us on LinkedIn and also YouTube, just to be aware of the uh when the video goes live. So I was the the LinkedIn page is not up yet. Okay, so just search PyData Glasgow. You will see us on LinkedIn. All right. See you on the next one. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so very much, Temidayo. We are deeply grateful,
All right.
and
Thank you,
you did
everyone.
yeah.
justice to this. Thank you, thank
Bye.
you, thank you. See you
All
on the
right.
next one.
Yeah. See you next month.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.